Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second session of Global HR Virtual Summit 2022 by Bizemag.com. Today, our guest of honor is Professor Wayne Brockbank from University of Michigan Ross School of Business. Thank you, Professor Wayne, for giving this opportunity to have a conversation with you on the most relevant and hot topic of current times. So dear participant, I will introduce Professor Wayne to you through a brief biography. And through this, you will come to know that how difficult it was for Professor Wayne. He has such a busy schedule because he works in so many countries at one time, giving his expert advice. I'm fortunate, I'm really feeling fortunate that he agreed to this session for us. Welcome, Professor Wayne Brockbank. I'll go through the brief biography for my participants and audience. So Dr. Wayne Brockbank is an emeritus professor of business at University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, as I already told. At the Ross School of Business, Dr. Brockbank is a core instructor of the Advanced Human Resource Executive Program. He is also the director of Strategy and Organization Executive Programs, India and United Arab Emirates. Over the past 30 years, these executive programs have been consistently rated as the best HR executive programs in the United States and Europe by the Wall Street Journal, Business Week, and Leadership of Excellence. He has been visiting faculty at universities in Argentina, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Australia, China, Indonesia, Hungary, United Kingdom, the Netherlands, India, Korea, and the Czech Republic. In 2013, he was acknowledged as one of the top 20 global HR thinkers by HR Most Influential. His research and consulting focuses on these areas: linkages between business strategy and human resources practices, creating high-performance corporate cultures, and key levers that drive business performance. He has published 7 books with co-authors on these topics and numerous articles in the Annual Review of Business Strategy, Human Resource Management Journal, Harvard Business Review, Human Resource Planning, and the Personal Administrator, and has contributed numerous book chapters. Outside of his university teaching and research responsibilities, Professor Brockbank has consulted in these areas with major corporations on every continent. Among his clients have been the Abu Dhabi Investment Authority, Tata Group, General Electric, BAE Systems, Eli Lilly, Cathay Pacific Airways, Unilever, Harley-Davidson, Citigroup, Shell, Lafarge, Mahindra & Mahindra, Vibe, Microsoft, IBM, Handelsblatt, ICICI Bank, Perez Combank, Sony Ericsson, Cisco, Godrej Group, Medtronic, Rolls-Royce, Walt Disney Corporation, General Motors, and the list is endless. Wow, how fortunate we are to have you, Professor Brockbank. Right now that we will have the golden chance of knowing your expertise directly from you. He has served on the board of directors for the Society of Human Resource Management and the Human Resource Planning Society. If we go at the academic credentials, Professor Brockbank completed his PhD at UCLA, that is University of California, Los Angeles, where he specialized in organization theory, business strategy, and international business. He received his Bachelor of Arts and Master of Organization Behavior from Brigham Young University. Welcome once more, Professor Brockbank. And without taking much of your time, I will jump to my first question to you. How can HR support and model a business strategy for startups for an upward journey to success? Over to you, Professor Brockbank.
Be stimulated by that by that technology, by the technology that intersects with product delivery, information strategy, and finance. And he had a passion for it, and he surrounded himself. And the job of HR is to make sure that that passion remains with those that are hired. That's one issue. Second is they need to continually remember, that is, HR professionals need to remember, as they're building an HR strategy for the startup, needs to remember to hire and reinforce the purpose of the institution. And sometimes we in HR get pulled off into side issues that might need to be done, but aren't really central to the issue at hand. I had a professor years and years ago, many years ago, named Armin Alshin, who is a candidate for a Nobel Prize. And I remember him hammering me as a student in the business school. He was an economics professor. He says, and he hammered me, saying, there's nothing that you do in business that means anything, including in HR, unless it creates positive cash flow on the outside, period. So you need to understand what the company needs to do to create positive cash flow, because if that doesn't happen, the company will fail, and all your employee engagement, all you're making people feel good, nothing else you do on the inside matters unless it creates that positive cash flow. And sometimes we in HR forget that. We get involved in our processes, our structures, our policies, our practices. You know, you've all heard the statement, why do we hate HR? It's because we fall in love with all that stuff instead of what the business requires to be successful. The most important thing that HR professionals can do for their employees is to make sure the company succeeds. It's not making them happy at work, because they can be happy at work, but if the company fails and they don't have a job, then they're not going to be very happy at work because they aren't going to be at work. And second, all kinds of really bad things happen to people who are unemployed. And India knows that as well as any country in the world. So our primary responsibility is to make sure that our HR policies connect directly with the value proposition and the position and the purpose of the firm, period. And not to get pulled off into stuff that's kind of nice to do, but is not central for success. Obviously, the last, then I'll maybe a couple more. Another thing that needs to be done is that obviously HR professionals need to encourage the employees to have skin in the game. And as much as possible in startups, that means stock options. It may be some form of profit sharing. Needs to be something where the employee has skin in the game, so that they understand that this is an entrepreneurial culture that exists in a startup, and they need to put their full heart and soul into ensuring its success. And finally, I've done quite a bit of work with a number of the tech startups in Silicon Valley and in Seattle. And one of the things the research pretty clearly says is the best employees, the high potential, the real drivers of future success, want to have a voice in the future of the company. They want senior management to listen to them. They want to have a voice in creating the future of the company and the industry. So those are four thoughts I have on the engagement proposition in a startup.
That's great information and knowledge. So, Professor, let us know how HR role is changed in current times.
I'm sorry, say it again.
How HR role is changed in current times for startups. Now everything is going online. So many companies are shut down. So many new companies are booming in COVID times because COVID is not leaving.
Well, yeah, and it has been a tragic time for so many people. I've lost some best friends, and I'm sure almost anybody who lives in India has also lost close friends. So this has been a tragic time. From an HR perspective, I think there's three immediate agendas, obviously to keep people safe. Second is to get them capable, and part of being safe is number two, giving them the skills to work from home. That's what, I don't know where you are, but I'm in my home right now. 2 years ago, I would have been at the office at the university, but now I'm at home. So they need to obviously give people the skills, the know-how, which it drove, I don't know, drove you crazy, but drove me crazy during the early years of COVID, trying to figure out what button to press to make sure I don't disconnect from Zoom or MS Teams or whatever I might be using. So people had to be trained in that. And, but we spent enormous amount, HR spent enormous amount of time and effort on those two issues, the health of the employees and their ability to stay healthy by working remotely. Not my biggest concern, that is my biggest concern, is the health and well-being of our people. But the second issue is, over the long run, more important, because making sure your people are healthy and that they have the ability to work remotely, that's a good thing. But I don't know, high performing companies and badly performing companies all are figuring that out. They know how to keep their people healthy. They're almost every company now has figured out how to work remotely. So we have to do that, but we have to also recognize that even though we spend a lot of time and effort on those two agendas, there's no competitive advantage there, because everybody can do it. So we need to keep in mind that that the fundamentals of business remain the same. That is, how do we design, manufacture, and deliver products and services that are better than the competition? And while we need to keep our fingers on the pulse of the health and well-being of our people, we also need to think about the long-term success of the firm by ensuring that we constantly focus our intellectual efforts within HR on creating a company that succeeds better than the competition. And that means making customers by doing our activities within our firm so well that customers want to buy from us instead of from our competitors. It's that simple. And sometimes in HR, we get spun off into side issues and we forget that fundamental proposition. So that's, let me give an example. I was trying to remember this morning how long ago it was. I think it must have been, almost 20 years ago, when there was this huge flood. You remember when the waves came into Mumbai and broke over the wave barriers in Mumbai, and the airport was flooded and the main streets in Mumbai were flooded. I don't know if you remember that. Maybe you're not old enough to remember that. I can remember that. And I was on my way to the airport that day, and the driver had the instinct to say, you're not going to fly out today. There's too much flooding. And he drove me quickly back and I think I got one of the last rooms that was available on the boardwalk there in Mumbai. And after I got settled in, I went downstairs, and there were 4 individuals who were 4 of the 7 founding members of a firm that I'm not going to give the name, but anyway. And they were there, and they recognized me, and they asked me to come over and join. And they were saying, we're having trouble keeping the entrepreneurial spirit alive, the startup spirit alive. I said, really? Well, tell me what the starting spirit of what the entrepreneurial spirit was of the startup. And they said, well, it's clear. In the first few engagements we had, people were working 14, 16, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. They were totally focused on doing whatever's required to make their customers happy. They would sleep in the customers, on the floor of the customers' offices. They would they were totally focused on sacrificing whatever was required. Work-life balance was a joke. There was no work-life balance. We were focused on doing whatever's required to meet our customers' requirements. I said, oh, okay, really? So today, so you feel like you're losing that. So tell me what you're offering new employee hires today. Oh, we're hiring a beautiful campus, and where they can get their meals easily anywhere on the campus. They can have their laundry brought to work, and we'll do it there. We want them to be happy at work. We want them to have we want them to be very satisfied with coming to work and being happy and enjoying their time. Now wait, so you're telling me what made you successful was long, hard, brutal hours, and what you're hiring today is people that want to have the ease of bringing their laundry to work and not having to drive home to develop. So what's the, and they said, oh, this is really interesting. So we're hiring people that are inconsistent with the work that we needed to have that made us successful in the first place. Just kind of an interesting anecdote. Sometimes we in HR think that our job is to make people happy. It's not. It's to help the company to be productive.
Correct. Yeah, that's a big myth busted, actually. You are right. So since your primary work, as I was going through your work, is to develop business strategy and enable HR to work on those business strategy to help company to be more efficient. Am I right, Professor?
Yeah, that's right. There's two approaches to strategy. One, whether you start from the outside in, and bring the market logic into the firm and develop the firm based upon a market focus. That's Jeff Bezos, Amazon said, you know, once we understand a market opportunity, we'll create the internal capabilities. The other approach is to understand your capabilities and go out and look for market opportunities. So there's two approaches. One's outside in, the other one starts with the inside and looks out. 3M has this great culture of developing innovation. So it creates products and then goes out and looks for markets for it. That's where Post-it notes come from. HR, so the first question the HR folks have to ask is, what is the corporation's approach to strategy? Is it an outside-in approach or an inside-out approach? If it's an outside-in approach, that is, we look for market opportunities, then develop the capabilities, then HR plays a role in making sure the capabilities are in place to help to meet the market requirements.
Mm-hmm.
If the approach to strategy is inside out, that is, you build the capabilities and then you go look for market opportunities, then HR needs to be very careful, because it's easy to build capabilities that the market may not want.
Correct.
So you need to make sure that whatever capabilities you're building on the inside still ultimately connects to what the requirements are of the markets on the outside. And in both of those cases, HR professionals need to understand the logic and process and alternatives of business strategy, as well as anybody in the firm.
Correct.
Because how do you develop capabilities? It's by who you hire, what you measure, you reward, who you promote, what you train, what you develop, what you communicate. All the HR practices are the vehicles, the mechanisms through which capabilities are developed, whether you're starting on the outside and looking in or starting from the inside and looking out. HR has to have a clear line of sight to the business and understand, again, the logic and process of strategy, as I indicated, so that everything that it does aligns with that strategy. I'm hoping that in the business school that I have the opportunity of addressing the students, that they spend a lot of their time understanding and reading the classics in business strategy and the emerging classics in the traditional classics in business strategy and the emerging ones. So that's my strong advice to your students. They should know as much about business strategy as they do about HR. So the question is, how many of your classes, how many of your classroom hours are spent studying strategy, or is it spent studying HR stuff? And I think you obviously need to know HR, but HR without a business strategy focus can be a problem rather than a solution.
So, Professor, on that note, I was talking to a few of my friends, and some of them turned out to be like, it was a new group meeting, and I was meeting new people, and 2 and 3 of them turned out to be HR professionals at a very senior level in some of the reputed companies. And when I say HR is a very important role and HR people are really significant people, they said, no, HR is a support system in a company. It is never given that significance as any other department. So what is your viewpoint on that? Because as far as I understand, without HR being incorporated into the mainstream of the company, correct kind of talent cannot be acquired, training cannot be acquired, organization cannot be developed in the way that company be productive.
Let me give you a very brief framework. Think about that. So think about business HR on one dimension, strategy and tactics on the other dimension. Mm-hmm. So a company has a business strategy. Say grow geographically, and maybe that's the business strategy. The business tactic then is to open up an office in Singapore. So there's that direct line. Now moving over along the vertical on the horizontal axis, you have HR strategy and HR tactics. Now we've gone from business strategy to business tactics. In almost every HR department, where's the arrow go? It goes over from business tactic to HR tactics. Mm-hmm. So we're going to hire. So we've opened up an office in Singapore. So what's the HR tactics? We need to hire some people in Singapore. We need to figure out how to pay them in the Singapore wages. We need to figure out the training we need to give them. We need to organize the office. We need to open up the office space. All those tactics. And in most cases, HR says, we've done our job. We have linked HR tactics to business strategy by linking to business tactics. Right? And most of your students say, that's right. But if that's where we stop our HR logic, we've created virtually no competitive value. Because and I would ask your students, do you think you could figure out how to hire the right people in Singapore? Do you think you know how to pay people in Singapore? Do you think you know how to train them? Do you think you know how to provide benefits? And they'd say, yes. You know what? You know how to do that. Who else knows how to do it? Everybody else.
Yeah.
That's the problem. And so the question is, how do you create competitive value? And we have done huge amounts of research on this, and it's through creating the leadership and organization capabilities that are directly aligned with the business strategy and not necessarily business tactics. You have to do the business you have to support the business tactics, you'll get fired. If you don't hire those people in Singapore, somebody will fire you. But that will not create competitive advantage. You need to use all of your HR toolkit, all the tools in the HR toolkit, to create and sustain the leadership and organization capabilities that are directly aligned with the business strategy. And that's sometimes what we forget.
That was great inputs.